YouTube, what's going on? Welcome to a holiday live stream. I normally wouldn't be coming to you like this, or even able to talk, apparently. But we've got news. We now know that the next Sharks general manager will be named tomorrow. 11 in the morning at SAP Center. You can watch, by the way, at NBCSportsCalifornia.com or through the Sharks app. But that's what we're here to discuss. There's a name out there, and it's an interesting one. It's a fun one. You bet we're going to talk about it. It's the title of this video. That's right. I forgot. I can't tease things here on YouTube because there's titles. See, on television, there's not necessarily a title of a show. Anyway, I'm not going to waste a ton of time here, but I do want people to have the ability to check in. So why don't we now kick it off?
Broadcasting live and worldwide. Here's Brody Brazil.
That's right, I'm here watching A's baseball. They're up 3-0 right now, taking on the Blue Jays. And Sharks news presents itself in my inbox. Tomorrow, we're going to find out who the next general manager of this franchise is. And I think a lot of fans are probably, relieved by that. There was some uneasy thoughts about Bob Bugner and his staff getting dismissed a couple days ago, which I will discuss, by the way, also in this video. That's important to talk about. But getting things settled, getting things squared away, the draft is also right around the corner, so technically this new GM will be at the helm of the Sharks for this draft. But what else does it lead to? A coaching hire? Is that also in the works? What comes next? And I think if you're the Sharks, this is how you want to do it. You want to hire your GM first, give it a couple days. You probably know who your head coaching guy is too, your candidate for that, and then you make that hire as well too. So we'll see if that's how it plays out. I want to give full disclosure here in this video because I've already made the thumbnail with Mike Grier. The title is Mike Grier. I do not for sure know that's what's happening or that's what's not happening. And what's funny about this situation is I'll be perfectly square with you. I have the resources to find out. In a weird, sick, maybe twisted way, I want to find out with all the rest of you tomorrow. But I'm not dumb. Like, I get the rumors and I understand why he'd be a front runner. And there's actually a couple things about Mike Grier you may not be aware of, which may lead you to go, okay. And that's obviously why the Sharks have been going through this exhaustive search. But they've got their person. They're excited about it. I can confirm to you that it is a human being. It's not artificial intelligence. They're not hiring a robot to be the GM. But here's what we're going to discuss in this video. Big choices to be made. At this moment, at this very second that I'm broadcasting live, the Sharks are the only team in the league that does not have a head coach nor a general manager. They're the last team out there, essentially, to make these hires. And they did just dismiss Bob Bugner, which will be the first thing we actually get to as part of this presentation. But I understand that there's a lot of people kind of trying to figure out what's going on here, what's next, when does it happen, who's it going to be. You could easily argue that these next couple days and these next couple weeks, as these decisions are made final and publicly announced, this is among the most pivotal time in the 30-plus year history of the Sharks as a franchise. It is the blankest of slates when you have a new GM, a new head coach, and more than a handful of roster and salary cap decisions to be made. I mean, there's just, this is pivotal. You could easily make that argument that right now is going to set a tone for the next year, 5 years, maybe even 10 years down the road. What happens here and now, it's absolutely critical. So that's what we're here to discuss. And in full fairness, I actually made this whole thing before I knew that there would be an announcement tomorrow. So I didn't know even when the announcement would happen, but apparently tomorrow at 11 in the morning. Let's first touch on this because it has not been talked about, at least by me yet, and not talked about by a lot of people in the media yet. A couple days ago, head coach Bob Bugner and his entire staff were dismissed by the Sharks. Now, I just want to look back and give you some perspective here, because in my opinion, Bob and his guys were facing an uphill battle literally since the day they took over in December of 2019. You remember the playoffs of 19, so the season prior to that, the Sharks had to barely get past the Golden Knights in that Game 7, that magical Game 7, and then they get past Colorado in round 2, and they go all the way to round 3. It was a really good start in that series, the conference final against St. Louis, but the Sharks ultimately lost there to the Blues. So going into the 2019-20 campaign, there was a lot of optimism about taking another step forward. This group had kind of galvanized in the prior season. I know we use that word a lot, and it just did not start off that way at all. Things started to unravel at the beginning of the 19-20 season. December, head coach Pete DeBoer gets fired. Bob Bugner takes over, and unfortunately kind of unravels even further from there. Now, this season only went 70 games for the Sharks because, as we're all aware, in March of 2020, the pandemic stopped everything. I'm not here to say at all that those final missed 12 games by the Sharks would have been anything magical. Every team had, their season cut short until the bubble came back in Toronto and Edmonton, but the pandemic there at that point had nothing to do with the Sharks' struggles. It just ended their season early. It ended a season that was getting uglier sooner. But in that season, things kind of fell apart, and I want to say this overall. For Bob Bugner, the moment he was brought on, it was never a turnkey gig. What do I mean by that? When the Sharks hired Todd McLellan, there was pretty much a team in place there to get you to the playoffs. And it was up to Todd to squeeze every last ounce of them to get them as far as they could possibly go. Ultimately, a couple of conference finals, and that was it. And the same thing with Pete DeBoer. When he was brought in, it was a group that was turnkey for the playoffs, turnkey for success. And he got them in his first season to the Stanley Cup final, the farthest they'd ever been. But when Bob Bugner came in, I'm not sure you can say that team was turnkey to go to the playoffs. Yeah, it had a couple really compelling names, but overall the team and the way it was and the way it was structured, and then every season after that, I'm not sure you can hold Bob Bugner up to the same standards that you did a Todd McLellan, a Pete DeBoer, honestly, any of the recent Sharks head coaches. It just was not the same. And I'm not here to make excuses or make this a sad song for Bob Bugner, but I'm just saying it was uphill the entire time. COVID challenges. Now, the prior season, I should say his first season taking over, that ended early. But the next year, not 2020-21, it was really just the 2021 season, started late, right? Started in mid-January. The Sharks were on the road for almost like 2 entire months. And during that time, because of all the restrictions here in the Bay Area, they couldn't even do things like have team meetings. And look, the pandemic was raging. Nobody was vaccinated. There was a lot going on in the world. I'm not here to even talk about that part of it. I'm only singling out the aspect of difficult to run a hockey team that already had some issues, and now you can't even see people face to face to try and gain some steam, gain some ground, and move forward. A tough assignment during the pandemic for every team, no doubt, but especially for the San Jose Sharks. Speaking of tough, how about the Evander Kane situation? And I have seen some comments out there that say, well, if you're the head coach, you're the person that's supposed to smooth these things over. It shouldn't be an issue between Evander Kane and his teammates. If you were doing a good job, you could make that a non-problem. I'm here to tell you that is beyond a head coach. I mean, small things, yeah, you can patch those. Big things, like apparently this obviously was, how many sports teams ever don't bring back their top scorer, one of their biggest offensive players from the prior season? They're not even basically welcome back. It just goes to show you, and we don't know the extent of the details or what exactly is going on, but the message is clear without the Sharks saying it. He just was not welcome back. But ultimately that goes back to the coach, because the coach has one less, tool in their shed, tool in their bag. You don't have a 30-plus goal scorer at your disposal anymore. So all of that goes back to reflect on the coach. And I say, it's not the coach's job to keep the team together. I mean, in general aspects, yeah. A coach is a leader by example, person that's working on team chemistry as much as strategy or anything else. But that's like saying that the coach is ultimately the only one responsible for motivating the players every single time. If they can't do that as professionals, something's wrong with the team greater than just the head coach. And that's the Sharks. That's pretty much any team across the board. Okay, so those are the main things I want to say about Bob Bugner and the dismissal of his staff as well, too. But I also want to give you some evaluations looking back. A coaching staff that, in my opinion, was always prepared. Now, preparation, execution, two totally different things. Being prepared and having the ability to execute on that preparation, I think that was the gap for the Sharks. Granted, there's a lot of teams that you look back and say, I'm not sure they were ready for that one. Or the coaching staff didn't put them in a position to succeed. And I cannot say that I ever observed that with Bugner and his staff in San Jose, because I think there were a lot of things that were clear to see, clear directions. If any indication of how he talked to the players could be made in how he talked to the media, how he talked to all of us, he's not a confusing person. There's not a whole lot of I don't understand you. Clear communicator. That's probably what I should have said instead. And that goes a long way with players, to know what to expect out of them, to know where they stand, what their role is going to be, how to get through tough times, all of that. And transparency is a huge part of it too. I mean, let's be honest, with the amount of losing the Sharks had been doing in the last couple of years, he had plenty of opportunities to get in there and rip his team after games. But he didn't do that, hardly ever. In fact, he was more, productive in being straightforward than he was being emotional. And it's fine to get emotional, but I think you get a lot farther with your players when you are more cerebral with it than anything else. But he was transparent with them. And I think that was pretty clear to see. It was appreciated. And I think it was that transparency really what you saw. And even with the Sharks team that lost 7 in a row and then lost 10 in a row at the end of the season there, he kept them from truly coming apart because he was so transparent with them. And that brings me to the last thing I'll say here about Bugner and his coaching staff. I think their dismissal is just it's the effect of a fresh coat of paint. And a new GM's coming in. We now know that's official starting tomorrow, whether it's Mike Grier, whether it's somebody else. The dismissal here is not to say, well, you guys didn't do a good job at all, or you were bad, or you held our team back. I think it's literally just to say that our entire franchise is moving in different directions. We want this fresh start. It has less to do about the coaches than it does to do about, new scenery for who's here and what we're trying to do moving forward. So, and, that's an unfortunate part of being a head coach in any sporting situation, any team, any league. I'll be honest with you. Broadcasters face this too. Broadcasters have nothing to do with games. They have a lot of things to do with teams, and sometimes teams want a fresh coat of paint. They want their audience to hear and see something different. So that is basically, if I'm boiling it down, and look, Bugner and his staff, they had to know that as soon as Doug Wilson, stepped away for medical reasons, that nothing was certain anymore about their standing. Despite a contract, despite anything else, nothing was certain anymore. And so their alerts, their red flags had to have been going off now for months. So I think the timing maybe of when their termination took place just a couple days ago might have caught them off guard. But again, I think what Joe Will said the other day, they didn't know who they were going with from a GM perspective and what that person wanted to do. And they wanted to keep Bugner. They probably sided with, for now, this makes sense for us. Let's see who the new person is, what they want to bring in. Clearly, the next person has their own people that they want to bring in, or they've got something specific in mind. So that's the end of the Bugner conversation. And that brings us to this. In no particular order, as I talk right now, as we're live here right now, you think about how much the Sharks have to square away, how many things they have to check their boxes on here. They need a new GM. They'll take care of that tomorrow. After that, they need a new head coach. After that, an entire coaching staff. After that, got to figure out what to do with scouts, hockey operations people. The list is long. So there's all of that, right? And then The new GM has to figure out what to do with goaltending, Three's company, the draft, which luckily now that person will be a part of the draft officially. A couple days lead time. You would imagine that they've already been studying up on this. But what the pipeline looks like for San Jose, all the young players, what to do on the blue line in terms of players, salary cap space, potentially how to create some more of it, as well as forward depth, which in my opinion was the glaring weak spot of the Sharks. And it kind of has been for a couple years, but especially so this year. You lose a lot of one-goal games, a lot of low-scoring close games, and or overtime loss games. I mean, that in itself right there is a situation where you're one of the league leaders in OTLs. You got one or two more in regulation, you win those games. So, again, if you weren't here at the beginning of this live stream, this is a lot. And this is why you can say right now, at this moment, there's never been a more critical time for the Sharks, a more pivotal, a more imperative time, whatever you want to say. Like this is going to affect how they make these decisions, is going to affect the team and the franchise for many and multiple years to come. There's no question about it. And I understand that some people will say, oh, they're late in the game. They're the last ones. And I stated that earlier. Just because they're the last in doesn't mean that they're not going to have great choices. More importantly, they just need to make the right choices here. So let's get into some of those things. Well, actually, first, forgot about this one. Let's get into Mike Grier for a second. Now, he's all the talk. He's all the speculation today and tonight and every second leading into tomorrow until 11 in the morning when this officially gets announced. But here's what we know about Mike Grier. Also, a couple things you may not know about Grierzy. 47 years old, obviously played with the Sharks as one of his teams. His dad has been an NFL front office executive for many years in a multitude of different roles. His brother currently right now and has been general manager of the Miami Dolphins of the NFL. So his dad and his brother have tons of front office experience. Different sport, but, this would be a new opportunity for Mike. Never been an NHL GM before, but nice to know that he's got some people to lean on. People he's watched, people that are closest to him. As for the playing side, that's what most people are familiar with. From 96 to 2011, played 1,060 games, including a couple hundred with the Sharks. Was it 07, 08, 09? Right around those years. Teammate of Curtis Brown. Now, I wouldn't put that on here because I don't want to insult Grierzy. But friend of Curtis Brown, so that should be interesting too. His current job right now is in hockey operations with the New York Rangers, but before that, he was an assistant coach with the New Jersey Devils, and before that, he was a scout with Chicago. So he's got, a variety of different, yet, kind of brief experiences with a couple different NHL teams. That's going to help him. He played for, 4 different NHL teams. That's going to help him. He's got family members that are front office executives in professional sports. That's going to help him. And he played for the Sharks, which I'll get into in a second. I don't know if that had to be a requirement of this. I could easily have seen them going with somebody who just, was brand new, fresh, didn't really get the tank other than had heard of it or, knew of it because they played against the Sharks. That's fine. All that's fine. But, the closer you get to this, the more exciting that is. You don't have to explain to him, like the passion, this area, how bad they want and need to get back to the playoffs after the last 3 years. So when I'm doing, and I really don't like going out on these ledges. I said this before. If you've just tuned into the live stream, let me just say it again. I literally have the ability to find this out right now, and I'm not doing it. I want to find out tomorrow with all of you. I didn't want to find out so that if I found out, I couldn't make this video and tell you, I don't know, it could be him. If I knew it was him, I don't know it was him. That's why I'm able to come on here and speculate like I wanted to. So maybe after I do this video, send a couple texts and find out. So if it is in fact Mike Grier, there's a lot of reasons to be excited. So let's dive into this. The general manager search factors. I made all this before we knew that there'd be an announcement tomorrow, but I still think all of this is fair and makes sense. As the Sharks were going through their process, would they select somebody who has done this job before or has never done this job before? Well, Grier hasn't, but he's got a ton of background in multiple different teams and roles and understanding the game from a player perspective and now a front office perspective. Like I said, family in the front office realm. So previous experience, I'm going to say no for him, but not entirely a no. But would the Sharks need that? Obviously, that's not necessarily mandatory for this job for them. Sharks connections, yes or no? I just want to say, it's great that Mike played with the Sharks, and played a lovable role as a penalty killer, a fan favorite type role. But this person didn't necessarily need to have these connections. It's a cherry on top. But it's not, for me, it didn't have to be that way. I know for some people, they thought that's how it should be. Or, you hear a Scott Nickel getting interviewed or a Ray Whitney getting interviewed. It doesn't have to be, to me, it never had to be a Shark. But now that the high speculation is that it will be, okay, now I'm kind of excited by that. Ties to the new coach. Now, again, I just don't think you make a drastic decision to let go of a head coach who you kept around longer because you might have thought that they were still on board, but maybe your new GM isn't into that, or they have a new head coach in mind. I would greatly suspect right now that if it is Mike Grier or whoever gets hired as the GM tomorrow, we're like a little more than 12 hours away, like 15, 16 hours away, I think. What time is it? Anyway, when that person is named, you got to know that they've got a very short list of head coaches, head coach, plus a couple assistants that they would like to bring on. I can't foresee, again, we are later in the process. I can't foresee the Sharks not having, the finalist as the head coach right now. And that's fine. If they have it and they don't want to announce that person, that totally makes sense too. Give that person their own day, because that one's not a rush. And then lastly here, the level of risk taking. Some people inherently want to come in, they instantly want to put their own stamp on things, even if, history is going to prove that, or time is going to prove that it wasn't the greatest move at first, but they just couldn't wait to get their name on it. So I don't know Mike Grier as an NHL GM. Is he going to be aggressive? Is he going to be a little bit laid back? Does he want to make big moves to start? Does he want to let things play out and then, wade himself into the waters a little bit? I don't know. But I'm sure the Sharks have asked those questions, and maybe they have some ideas of what they want him to be. Certainly they want to win. They want to turn things around. But you know what I'm saying, right? There's two ways of doing this. Coming in, day one, surprising people, making the moves you've been wanting to make. Option number two, a little bit more reserved. I'm going to give this some time. I'm going to feel this for myself and then make those difficult choices. So I don't know. But those are the options, right? The ways of doing this. There's going to be tough choices all the way around. You've got a goalie situation where, and this is probably a better than most type situations. You got James Reimer, Aiden Hill, and Kaapo Kähkönen. Kähkönen, who you acquired late in the season because Hill had so many injuries and couldn't finish the campaign, couldn't be part of the campaign start to finish. James Reimer was your most consistent veteran, but honestly, I think when he was brought in, it was to support Hill, but it was also to hopefully watch Hill take and run with that number one role. That didn't happen, and that couldn't happen due to all the injuries with Aiden this year. So now you're in a spot where you probably can't carry all three of these goaltenders. And you got to get something back, something of value back in return. Now, Kähkönen is a RFA. Hill and Reimer are still under contract for this upcoming season. I don't see any way they don't re-sign Kähkönen for that RFA value. But you got to, if you're gonna trade one of these players away, you have to get something back, and you also need to be right. What do I mean when I say that? If Reimer is the most valuable to other teams, hypothetically, and the stats would prove that, I'm not trying to make this personal or be mean, but you got to know that Hill and Kakinen could get you through the next season, or that you have other options besides those two internally. Or you also have to know that if you do decide to deal Hill or Kakinen, that they're not going to go somewhere else and be the next big thing and then hurt you, and then, you weren't right about that either. So I'm not even going to tell you that I have an idea of what to do here. It's difficult all the way around. I don't know. Or maybe you start fresh and you deal two and you get somebody else back and I don't know. I didn't think goaltending was an entire issue last year again. I thought it was better last year for the most part. But yeah, there are some tough choices to be made there in the goaltending department. Tough choices on the draft and young players. Now, a new general manager and a new head coach, they're going to be getting their first look at these young players. And I mean like hands-on with them. And it's going to be important because the next wave for the Sharks, it needs to hit. You know, the Coes, the Eklunds, eventually the Ozzy Weisblatts, all these players, they'll, like I said, they need to hit, they need to click, whatever you want to call it. They need to be a part of this team at the earliest opportunity. It's also good now, and I wasn't sure about this. In fact, I had to change that little number 2 one right here. I wasn't sure that the Sharks general manager would be in place by the draft. It turns out, in being hired tomorrow, this person will be part of the draft for a couple days. So it'll be nice to know that at least the draft picks will have that person's approval, name on it. Okay, we can start with that. We can move forward from there. I'm just saying it's going to be hard for the head coach and for the GM to really have a grasp on what to do with the young players. I mean, look at Eklund, for example. The 9 games he played up here last year, then he went to Sweden, didn't have the season that maybe he or the Sharks wanted him to have in Europe. So what do you do? Like, it's going to be a hard move. Like, what do you do next season to keep him here or assign him somewhere else? I hope it's a clear decision, and I hope it's here. I hope. But you want to make the smart decision for William and your franchise, tough choice, right? Especially when you're just meeting the guy. Tough choices on defense and on depth. And, I think it's very clear cut. There's 3 defensemen out there, all very different people, different skill sets, different contractual situations. But that's where a lot of your salary cap is tied up. And that's also probably the space that you could gain the most flexibility if you free it up. You have some other options. You've got some younger players there, some that have already proven they're ready when you've been shorthanded. But I don't know the move, and I'm not going to get in and speculate on that too. But, I mean, it's pretty clear that that's an area where difficult decisions have to be made if you really want that salary cap flexibility and if you're going to do something with it. So that's another thing the GM is up against. And then how about this? Like I said, that's not even, the Sharks' biggest thing. What ultimately is their weak spot is just up front. Bolstering their top 6 and deepening out the rest of their forward lines. I think somebody said last year at the end of the season, the Sharks scored about 40 to 50 fewer goals than they thought they would entering the season. And that alone cost them a lot of wins and maybe even a shot at the playoffs. I realize wins and losses, we're far off from the playoffs, but that is a good point. A lot of close games, a lot of lack of scoring for this team. That to me was their Achilles heel, and that to me is the thing that needs the most attention. So maybe you're sacrificing a little bit of your defense and those established contracts. You want to free that up so that you can make more moves and be better up front. Also, this isn't just about defensemen being defensive and forward scoring for you. I mean, you need more from your blue line offensively, and you need more of your forwards playing better defense. So it's a little bit of everything. But to be clear, I think forward-wise is where the Sharks could probably deepen up a little bit. All right, and that just brings me back to the beginning here. I mean, big choices to be made, a most, decisive the most decisive time for the San Jose Sharks. I'll put this back up here. Is this what it's going to be? I'm interested. I'm intrigued. I think it's cool too. I mean that it's somebody not far removed from. From 2011 to what are we talking here? 11 years since he was a player in this league. That's a pretty quick turnaround from retirement to a couple steps in between. Like I said, Chicago, New Jersey, and the Rangers. To being an NHL GM. That's a short time. And I'm wondering, all speculation by the way, I'm wondering if this is the name that'll be announced tomorrow. I wonder how the live chat's going. Are there any questions? Are there any comments? There are. So let's get to them. Let me set up for that real quick, and then we can just jam through some of these. I honestly didn't plan to do a whole Q&A session, but I will get to that. Dalton, hello. Thank you for being here. SJ Viper Kid. Hey, Zach. What's the score say? It's 3-1 A's, buddy. Vince, how you doing? Joe saying that's when you do a clickbait title, and hit YouTube with a misdirection. Yeah, on the 4th of July. Yeah, here I am. Click, I get you. Riley, hello. Zach, that's right. You get to go into the draft with a general manager. And I totally agree. A coach can be named later. And they've probably got that person and those people for the staff in mind. Brutus, I appreciate you being here for the chat. Always appreciate your moderation. Fry telling me, Fry confirming it. Why should I ask anywhere else? Mike Grier is front runner. We did talk about that. Let's see what we got here. Denver saying, loved Grier on the Sharks. Did everything right. Just a solid glue guy on the roster. And that's kind of what I was implying before. It could have been a Shark too. What if it was a Shark that I'm just trying to think of a person who was only around for a short time and, was liked, but no big deal. Okay, but yeah, Griersy there was a thing there. There was a connection there. So made an impact here. Being a former player of a team to be a GM candidate is dumb. Well, if you're saying, Denver, that the team was like mandatory about that, then I agree. Like if you could only be a finalist by being a Shark at some point, then that the Sharks didn't do that. They did not limit their search to that. They looked at everything and everyone. And it just so happens that this one is interesting. Put some respect on Zach Sawchenko's name. Fernando, you're right. And he sat way too long to get those starts, few and far in between. Absolutely is true. Let's see what we got here. Riley, my day is busy. Watching the baseball game, doing this live stream. Got a lot of stuff going on tomorrow. Alicia, happy to see you here too. So, I think I'm gonna leave it at that. That's gonna be. I just wanted to see what people were saying out there on the live chat. So, stay tuned tomorrow. It's gonna be a very big day for the Sharks. You'll know who the next general manager is, and that starts kind of the domino effect. Then you'll pretty soon after that know who the head coach is and the coaching staff are, and what type of decisions this new person is going to make. And I do expect the questions tomorrow about individuals and situations and salary cap and come on. Those questions have to be asked. I get it, but that's not going to happen. You're not going to tip your hand on that. Yeah, here, I just got in. Let me tell you all my secrets. It's just not going to happen. And let me just go back to one thing, which, I think is as interesting as anything else here. You've got a young man. He's 47, played for the Sharks. Dad's been in NFL front offices for a bit. His brother right now is the current GM of the Miami Dolphins. He's got a silver stick to his name, so 1,000 NHL games. He's been with 3 different teams, so had the opportunity to see how other franchises run beyond the, 4 that he played for. Should be good. You know, look, how many times would I sit here and be like, yeah, I don't know if this is going to work. I just wouldn't say anything. So the fact that I am intrigued and excited by this is genuine. So I'll leave it with that. Thank you, everybody, for being here on the live stream. Sharks videos to come tomorrow. I'm not going to live stream the press conference, but definitely have an update for you afterwards. All right, so until then, be safe tonight, everybody, and enjoy your 4th of July holiday. Good night.